Oh, man. Hey, shalom, everybody. How you doing? Welcome back to Reading with Shiloh. What's up, baby? I'm Shiloh. What's the business, man? What's the business? I'm Ocho. We ready to read. This is part 21. Part 21 of Reading with Shiloh. We are in the sea of pages laid to us by Miss GWENDOLYN MIDLO Hall. Africans in the Colonial Louisiana. I said we was gonna read early today. Yeah, we reading really early today. Man. Oh my. I see all the stuff in my eyes. The sleep. The sleep is in my eyes. But it's all gravy. We're gonna get it done, man. We got a mission. We got a mission to complete today. We're gonna keep growing through chapter 8. We started chapter 8 last night. The Point Capee Post is where we started last night. We still got a good little ways to go in chapter 8. So we're gonna go ahead and mine our way through chapter 8, roll our way through chapter 8. When y'all come on in, like, comment, share, subscribe, tell your people I'm out here reading shit, doing shit. Put some in the chat. Let me know the chat working. Shalom, everybody. What's up? What up with you? Man, we working our way, man. We working our way through. We're almost done with the book. By chapter wise, we're on the down slope of the book. The book only has 11 chapters in it. And we are in chapter 8. We're almost on the end. We're almost on the end of the book, man. Almost. But we'll keep pushing. We'll keep pushing. One book at a time, one session at a time, man. And since I have a breath to breathe, and I got all I need to succeed. Shalom, Miss Boxy. Shalom. Oh, man, my neck hurts. Ugh. Like my son said, I got a cricket in my neck. Oh, Lord. But, man, we're going to get it in. We're going to get it in. Let's 25 things. Let's go ahead and work our body. Work your body, work your mind, work your body as a routine we're about to do. We're about to keep at it. We're about to keep pushing on the routine. Keep pushing on the routine so we can go ahead and get our shit together. And we could be better. Oh, man. Oh, man. Lord knows I don't feel like doing nothing right now. But like I said, since I want to be able to read early, so that way we can do a little workout before the Sabbath hits. Before the Sabbath hits. Man, I'm gonna give you 25. I'm gonna do some I worked this 50 last night, man. I'm gonna go ahead and work this 50 again. Go ahead and work this 50 again and work on these love handles. I gotta get rid of these love handles. Oh man. I gotta handle the love. Can't stop the love. Love handle it. So get your ass up. Do 25 somethings. 25 jumping jacks. 25 anything. 25 anything that'll help you move, get a move on, work your body a little bit. Do 25 somethings. I'm gonna grab these 50s and I'm gonna do 25 somethings. All right. All right. 25 and then we'll go ahead and read. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, pick it up, 15, 16, 17, 18, that's what I need to work, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. The other side. 1, look at them love handles. 2, 3, I want that V shit. 5, 6, 7, 8. They say the Tyrese 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25 of them suckers. Whew. Now we can read. Now let's get into Miss Hall's, Miss Gwendolyn Midlo Hall's book. Let's get into it so we can get it out the way. Early reading for today. Well, yeah, they was doing a lot of talking about Point Capee, man. Point Capee and Lake Pontchartrain last night. It was hot. I might need to go get that fan. But it was a lot of, they said that they were, in the censuses, they were skewing the numbers based off of the slaves. If you were a mulatto or a freed slave, then they would put you as white on the census. So if the slave master was messing or had children with one of his slaves, then they would put her as white, and the children would be white as well on the census. So the numbers of the censuses were skewed. It was a lot of battling going on in Point Capee, and Point Capee at one point became a very important piece of land that they was battling with the Natchez and I want to say the Chittimaca Indians, as well as the Chickasaw. The Natchez and the Chickasaw was battling against the French, and they were stealing blacks, women, children, men, whatever, so they could sell to the English for whatever trade goods that they wanted. So that's about where we left off at. So we'll finish off. This is part 21. Part 21, the continuation of chapter 8 of Africans in Colonial Louisiana by Ms. Gwendolyn Midlo Hall. Now, the Indian raids continued into the 1740s, and in 1741, a bold party of 7 Chickasaw Indians camped out for 2 days on the land of Sierra Ricard at the center of the settlement of Point Capee. They were only a pistol shot away from the main road, and during the religious holiday of Fête Douai, or Fête Douai, which I don't know what that is. We might need to look up what Fête Douai is, but let's mark it and put a question mark by it. Fête Douai, question mark. 50 or 60 settlers passed along the road on their way to church and unaware of the presence of the Chickasaw. And luckily, they were not fired upon. Before the Chickasaw left, they seized 3 little black girls and a white orphan boy who had been collecting reeds, and a party of 50 French and Indian men pursued them, concluding from their abandoned camps that there were 15 Chickasaw. The Chickasaw eluded their pursuers and taking their captives with them. And although the initial report indicated that the orphan was still alive, he was eventually killed. And an eyewitness reported that the 3 black girls were sold to the English, and a local official wrote, "It is to be feared that we will be visited by the Chickasaw frequently, which would upset the settlers very much, and especially since we are about to have an abundant harvest, and best I have ever seen." And when a P-row of Chickasaw Indians tried to make a descent into the middle of Point Capee in 1741, the settlers assembled armed their black slaves, and the Chickasaw fled. Clearly, the primary concern of whites, blacks, and friendly Indians was mutual protection, and the common danger they faced cemented ties among them. In spite of its insecure beginnings, the Point Capee settlement grew, and by 1739, there were 48 farms occupying about 2.5 lieues along the Mississippi River. The land was described as very good and high enough not to require levies. Now the ordinator, Solomon, obliged that the settlers to pay 1,500 livres to build a church and order their land surveyed. And by 1741, Solomon wrote that the post had at least 100 settlers, and probably meaning male heads of the family, and more than 500 blacks of all sexes and ages. The east bank of the Mississippi River, opposite of Point Capee Post, was not settled because of fear of the Indians who wandered about there from time to time. And these lands were too low for cultivation, and paths that led to the Chickasaw Indians and to the New England. The inhabited part of Point Capee fronted the river and ran 20 or 60 arpents deep, and beyond which were cypress swamps full of water, lakes, and flooded prairies. Indigo, corn, and tobacco were cultivated, and at times the river rose 50 periods and 50 peeds and flooded the lands and obliging the settlers to build levees to protect themselves. Few fish could be found in the area, but there were many alligators and reptiles and an abundance of many variety of insects, which reduced the settlers to despair, I bet. There were many birds, some transitory, including ducks, Canadian geese, cranes, and other aquatic varieties, as well as Amazonian parrots, cardinals, and woodcocks, which were hunted at night by torch. Deer and bear had become rare since the post was settled and obliging the Indians to live elsewhere. There were no more wild cattle, and wildcats had become rare as well. Cypress was the most common tree, but was neither of the size nor the quality of the cypress in and around New Orleans. By 1746, Point Capee reportedly contained about 200 settlers and 400 blacks, and the principal occupation was the cultivation of tobacco on small farms and of subsistence crops. Warfare, lack of shipping, and low prices for tobacco stunted the growth of the post. And by 1747, tobacco had been piling up for 2 years because of the lack of shipping. Of 400 bouquets, or casks, ready to ship, there was room to load only 100. And aside from shipping problems, the price of tobacco had fallen so low that the settlers were ready to abandon its cultivation. Now, Vaudreuil urged them to continue to grow the crop, and he requested that the king's ship load it in preference to any foreign staple, and that the king's purchase it at 6 sols per pound, and promising to send only tobacco of good quality. The governor pointed out that the tobacco grew well in the colony and was the only resource of the small planters, who had few slaves or none at all. Now, he claimed that some small planters had started out planting tobacco, and within a few years, time had become big planters. And by 1749, the end of the King George's War allowed for the revival of shipping, and tobacco cultivation began to thrive at the post, and pelts and indigo were also being shipped. With an assured market and available shipping, tobacco cultivation expanded during the early 1750s, and by 1752, colonial officials were calling for more peasants and black slaves for police and for discipline among the troops to assure the future of the colony. And although markets and shipping became available during the few years between the end of the King George's War in 1748 and the beginning of the French and Indian War in 1754, new problems arose that stemmed from regressive, exploitative, and corruptive political practices. Ordinator Solomon accused Vaudreuil of appointing local officials who gave him kickbacks, and many of them were his relatives, and Vaudreuil accused Ordinator Michael of protecting Trinonet de Chanfret, his subdelegate at Point Capee, who was preying upon the settlers by imposing confiscatory, that's another word, confiscatory fines arising from deputies that he himself had stirred up, and it appears that both of these officials were right. Trionet de Chanfret forced Pierre Germain to the most active prosperous and generous settler of the district to leave the colony. Now, Trelawney had established his authority in 1741 over the objections of Sieur Dalhousie, and the hero of the Natchez War and the military commander of the post. And by 1750, Trelawney was well established, enjoying the protection of the Ordinator Michael, and who's praised him highly to the government, asking for prerequisites and expenses to encourage him to continue to carry out his duties at the post. Now, Germain, who had begun his career in the Tunica village, was accused of using his own brand on his cattle belonging to his neighbors. And the branding was carried out by German slaves, according to Vaudreuil, and it was an honest mistake. However, Trelawney imposed confiscatory, I wonder if that has something to do with confiscating, confiscatory fines on Germain. And although Germain had agreed to all his demands, Trelawney convinced a number of settlers to leave their work and descend to New Orleans to protest against Germain. Let's see, confiscatory. 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 Confiscatory means something is characterized by or results in confiscation, which is the act of taking away property or goods by authority. It often describes a legal or governmental action where something is taken from an individual, particularly in the context of taxes or laws. How do you pronounce it? What's up, my boy?
Sorry, give me some syrup, please.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Is there a dirt bag in there?
Kill it.
I see it in the window.
All right. And it does have something to do with confiscation. The harassed Germain sold his estate along with all his slaves and at a very low price. And he and 6 other families, his wives, relatives, whom he had generously established at the post, were planning to leave. And Vaudreuil pointed out that since Germain had no children, his departure would deprive settlers at the post of his rich inheritance, as well as that of those, he had helped to establish and others he planned to establish in the future. Other settlers were planning to leave because Trelawney tyrannized over the settlers, abusing his authority by inflaming the least conflict that arose and profiting from the least incident. And Vaudreuil, as the government, I lost my place. There we go. And Vaudreuil asked the government to eliminate the posts of subdelegate and have only a commanding officer, a system that he claimed worked smoothly at the German coast. The French and Indian War reduced the Point Capiz settlement to desperate straits, and shipping was cut off, and markets were eliminated, supplies were extremely scarce, and Indian raids resumed, and 2 settlers were murdered during an Indian raid. And nature added to man-made miseries. And in 1758, there was a bad harvest, and famine struck, and the settlers were reduced by hunting in order to survive. Now, flour and gunpowder were distributed to them, and in 1760, a new fort was completed at Point Capiz, and one of the last feeble gestures to protect French Louisiana. Now, Point Capiz post prospered greatly after Spain took possession of Louisiana, and Claude Trelawney, nephew and heir of Trelawney de Chamfret, became one of the handful of big slave owners who emerged during the late 18th century. And in 1785, during the Indigo boom, he had purchased 40 Negri bruts right off of the slave trade ship from Africa. And he was assured by the slave traders from whom he brought the slaves that they were of good nations. Des bons nations. Des bons nations. Aged between 16 and 22. and they were to be delivered on his plantation by March 1st, 1786, and each was to arrive clothed with a good woolen blanket, a shirt, and a hat. And by 1791, Trelawney owned 111 slaves, 52 of whom were Africans. Only on July 9th, 1791, at about 8 p.m., Trelawney was seated at his dining room table with Joseph Etienne Blanc, his personal physician and surgeon, and Francois Maillot, his manager, and Andre Garriot, his man of confidence. And Trelawney and his retainers were being served by 3 of his domestic slaves, Jean Malatrice, Zenon Malatre, and Esther, a negresse on the Fawn Nation, of the Fawn Nation. And the soup course had been served, and the 3 domestic slaves were in the kitchen eating their own dinner, and suddenly a shot rang out. Garrot ran to the door of the dining room, but when he heard a profound sigh coming from Trelawney, he ran back to help him, calling for Blanc to come and attend to the wounded man. Blanc, however, was hiding, and he claimed that the bullet had grazed his right ear and that he had crumpled and fallen under the chair before running to hide under the porch steps. Now Jean Malatrice came running into the dining room, and where she found her master in the hands of Garrot, and Trelawney was bleeding from the nose and mouth. And after examining the site of the wound and Trelawney's condition, Blanc concluded that the wound was fatal, and Trelawney's companions left him where he had fallen. They went for Valentin Leblanc, commandant of the post, who arrived to find Trelawney's body slumped at the dinner table, and Francois and Auguste Hélène, both militiamen, were already there when the commandant arrived. Now Magloire Malatre Creole, Julien Malatre Creole, and Andre Nigre Creole all testified that they saw the assailant, and he was Trelawney's slave, Latouple Ibo, a maroon for the past 3 weeks. And Latouple had shot his master with a small musket, firing through the dining room window while standing near the porch. And 3 of Trelawney's slaves, one of whom was a hunter, identified Latouple Ibo's footprints near the porch steps. Now Latouple had small feet and toes that spread out, and Andre Nigre Creole added that he knew that Latouple had bad intentions toward his master. Now, several slaves working at the infirmary witnessed Latouple's flight from the scene of the crime, and Marie Tracy ran out of the infirmary when she heard the shot and recognized Latouple as he fled. Now, Madeleine Grieve, the cook, Fouchon Negrisse, the nurse, and her daughter, Marie Therese, all testified that they recognized Latouple's voice. And he said, "It is I myself, Latouple. You are done for today, and so am I. C'est mon ami. C'est mon ami. Latouple. Tout fini, mon assis, and c'est ton..." Oh, Lord, I'm fucking it up. C'est ton dernier jour agira mon tien assis. I know I messed a lot of that up. Now, Jean Malatrice explained Latouple's motives for killing his master, and Trelawney had accused Latouple of stealing and had him flogged and put into a wooden stock located in the infirmary. Both Jean Malatrice and Fouchon, the nurse, reported that the day Latouple was put in the stock, he said to his master, "I believe you do not need me anymore," in Louisiana Creole. And the master replied that he needed him, but not a rogue who was always involved in thefts. And after 5 days, Latouple succeeded in breaking the hinge of the stocks and escaped. And he was gone for 3 weeks before he returned and killed his master. Commandant LeBlanc declared a full alert to find the killer, and a militia patrol searched the Trelawney slave quarters for firearms, but found nothing. and LeBlanc sent the Panaros, sent for Panaros, chief of the Tunica Indians, and showed him Letuple's footprint. And Panaros and 4 of his men were sent to look for Letuple. Now they were offered big rewards if they found him, but they found neither Letuple nor his footprints. And 3 militia patrols were sent to all the slave quarters every night for an indefinite period. And on July 12th, Magliore Malatre came forward to report that he had seen Letuple the day before at about 3:30 p.m. And Letuple had been walking through the Trinone slave quarters carrying a little musket. Magliore was not sure it was Letuple until he spoke, saying simply, "Bonjour, Magliore." Letuple had then headed for the woods, and Magliore Malatre said that he had not reported the incident sooner because he was afraid. And at 4 a.m. on July 14th, Narcisse Bakoko was on his way to the fields when he hit his foot on a small musket lying along the path leading to the slave quarters. And he brought the gun to Mayo, Trinone's manager. And at 5 a.m. the same day, Simon Nigri, second Commodore, was returning from the field. As he passed Letuple's cabin, he noticed that the door, which had been left open since Letuple ran away, was closed. And he opened the door and found Letuple hanging. He yelled out, "There's Letuple!" Now Mayo entered Letuple's cabin and found he had hanged himself with his shirt. I don't see why he would do that shit. And they cut him down near the body where they found the fabric bag containing 10 grams of lead wrapped in a cloth, a ball that seemed to have been already fired, a bad musket stone, and several little pieces of torchwood. Now LeBlanc ordered all the Trinone slaves to Letuple's cabin and said to them, "There is the one who killed your master, and he who wants to show his regret will prove it by cutting off his head." Now Charlotte Nigre-Criole, first Commodore, did so, and Andre Nigre-Criole, indigo maker, then cut off a hand, and Segue Malatre, gardener, cut off the other hand, and Magloire Malatre cut off one foot, and César Nigre the other foot, and Maillot ordered all these body parts to be exposed to the top of the post in view of the slave quarters of the plantation, and the remains of the body buried at the foot of the post. Was Letuple Igbo among the 40 Nigre brutes, a good nation, purchased by Trinone? And if so, Trinone was cheated. And at Point Capi Post, the Igbo were reputed to be a bad nation. For example, a Nigre brute of unknown nation was sold, but the seller guaranteed that the slave was not an Igbo. And throughout the Americas, Igbo slaves were reputed to be suicidal. And it was thought that their tendency to hang themselves stemmed from their belief in the transmigration of souls, and that after death, they would return body and soul to their homes in Africa. And in Cuba, during the 19th century, entire plantations of Igbos hanged themselves from trees simultaneously. They were mutilated to discourage other slaves from following their example, but other Igbos hung themselves from the same trees. And although there were a considerable number of Igbo slaves at Point Capi, they were mainly women, and 35 Igbo women and only 23 Igbo men were found in the Point Capi inventories from 1771 to 1802. 3 years after the murder-suicide of Trinone and Letuple Igbo, Jean Malatrice Creole petitioned Commandant Duparc for freedom for herself and for her 3-year-old quadroon son, Henri. And they had been estimated in the Trinone estate inventoried at 450 pastilles for both of them. And she must have been dark because Trinone's manager who appraised the estate listed her as black and the race of her son as unknown. And Henri's baptismal records list his mother as Jean Malatrice of Sire Trinone, and gives no race for the child, and the godparents were free mulattoes. In elegant language, Jean Malatrice wrote that her master, Claude Trinonet, intended to free me and my quadroon son, Henri, around 3 years old, and he always repeated to me during his lifetime that I should be confident of my future, that I would never serve another master except him. And in recognition of the good and agreeable services which I rendered to him daily, and above all, the attachment to him which I have demonstrated during all his illness, and because of the attention and assiduous care which I gave him, the attention of the said deceased is well known, and M. de Cure, who was defender of the absent heirs, and M. Armand Duplantier, the nephew of the deceased, have written to France, to the brothers and sisters of my master, to explain to them the reasons why they should agree to the well-known truth of their brother in relation to me. And I therefore ask that you show regard for my just representations and agree to suspend my sale and that of my son Henri, addressing my humble request to the superior court. Commandant Duparc ordered Richard de Retard, defender of the interests of the absent heirs, as well as the deceased nephews Armand Duplantier and the deceased's mother, to appear to respond to Jean Malatrice's petition and to clarify the matter. And Ricard de Retord declared under oath the intentions of Sir Claude Trinonet towards the said Jean are perfectly well known to me, as well as her attentions and affections for her deceased master. And consequently, I believe that justice would be badly served if I opposed the least obstacle to her claim for freedom. Armand Duplantier was then sworn in and declared under oath that Jean Malatrice's petition conforms to the most exact truth, and Trinonet's mother made no objections, and Jean and her son Henri were separated from the slaves inventoried for sale and free the following year. And a few months later, her little girl, Ulili Malatrice, father unknown, was baptized, and Armand Duplantier was the godfather. And Duplantier freed his 3-year-old mulatto slave Robert, and there was an adult Malatri named Duplantier at the post in 1795. All of the prominent and respected men involved in these proceedings had concubines and children of African descent. 2 of them both bachelors, and maintained lifetime relationships with their concubines, and one of whom was black and the other mulatto. Now, both of them fathered several children by their concubines, and in 1786, Ricard de Retord lived with Marianne, a free black woman, and her 4 mixed blood children in the same household as Francois, Elaine, and Marie Ricard, his wife, and probably Ricard de Retord's sister, and their 7 children. The Ricards and the Elaines were involved in 11 emancipations of slaves, and most of them gratuitous. And Ricard de Retord helped several free mulattoes establish themselves with land, slaves, and merchandise. And he mortgaged his own belongings and, by power of attorney, an estate belonging to Louis Ricard, Malatri Libre, so that the merchant Julien Pedres would furnish goods to the free mulatto Joseph de Cure, who wrote to Trinonet's siblings in France asking them to free Jean Malatrice and Henri, and made a donation to the 4 quadroon children of Francois Belou Malatrice Libre, in recognition of the good service which the said Francois Belou Malatrice Libre has lent him, and for the good friendship which I feel towards the children of the said Francois. He gave each child one of his slaves, providing that in case of the death of one of the children, the survivors would divide the donation among them. And Antoine de Cure and Jean-Baptiste de Cure were godfathers at the baptism of the 2 Francois Belou's children, and Joseph de Cure appeared as grandfather at the baptism of Francois Bellou's grandchild. And these men were among the handful of large slave owners at the settlement. And if the most prominent men at Point Capit chose women of African descent, this was not because of a shortage of white women. And in 1786, the sex ratio among whites aged 15 to 49 was 0.77, or 77 men to 100 women. And only 54% of the white women aged 15 to 49 at the post were married. And it was only after 1795 that there was an influx of single white male immigrants at the post, creating a sex ratio of 1.67 among whites. And at Point Capit, remote from the center of Spanish government in New Orleans and the corporalist hierarchical concept of race, the separate category free mulatto did not clearly emerge until the census of 1803. Excuse me. Damn. Now, before 1803, few free people of African descent were listed as such. The census of 1763 listed no Frenchis, either black or mulatto. And in order to cut through the complexities of the Point Capit population, the 1786 census lumped together all free people who were heads of families, regardless of race or gender. And under the listing, whites and free people of both sexes who are heads of families. And there was only one adult woman among the 8 free people of African descent listed separately, and she was black. And there were 5 mixed blood children, 1 mixed blood adult male and 1 elderly black male. And in 1790 census put all free people in the category, names of heads of families, foreigners, and free persons, and totaled them under the category whites. And there was no separate category for free people of African descent. And the categories for the totals were black slaves, mixed blood slaves, and whites. All free people of African descent, regardless of race, were counted with the whites. And the black concubine of Ricard de Retourde, Libre Marine, 5 children and 6 other adults in her household were counted among the whites. And Louis Ricard, described in notarial records as a free mulatto, his wife and 2 children were counted with the whites. And that the 1790 census did not enumerate free people of African descent as a separate category is clear from the 1792 report that listed 3 free mulatto men, Louis Claudio Elclair and Jean-Baptiste Grandet Migon and Jean Farah, and the 4 free black men, Pedro Dumas, Juan Batista Disbregonon, Pedro Juin, and Jimmy, who resided in the district. And a church census dated from 1795 listed 37 free mulatto children under age 14 and 15 boys, 22 girls, 11 adult free mulatto men, and no free mulatto women. And all free people of African descent were listed as mulattoes, and all slaves were listed as blacks. And the free mulattoes jumped from 6 in 1786 to 47 in 1795 and 55 in 1803. And persons listed as free blacks declined from 2 of 1786 to none in 1795 and in 1803. And evidently, once the Point Coupee community was forced to acknowledge free people of African descent as a separate category, they listed all of them as mulattoes, regardless of race. And the 1803 census of Point Coupee and False River counted 12 male and 23 female free mulatto children under age 15, 8 free male and 8 free female mulatto adults, and no elderly people. And over age 49, pointing to a recent emergence of free people of African descent as a separate category. Yet, only 38.5% of the slaves who were emancipated were males, and this discrepancy in sex ratio between the free mulatto population and that of the emancipated slave is accountable only partially by the migration to New Orleans of more freed women than freed men. And it is likely that by 1803, women affranchised. I wonder what that means. I wonder if that has something to do with Africans. Put a question mark there. Affranchised, and their children were counted as mulatto when they were married to affranchised men, and white when they were married to or concubines of white men. Let's see if we can look up that word, man. AFFRAN. Let's see if I can get this.
Why do couples choose a Sleep Number smart bed? Can it keep me warm when I'm cold?
Shut your ass
I'm always
up.
hot.
Affranchi. What does it mean? Affranchi, former French legal term denoting a freed man of emancipated slave, but also a purgatory term for free people of color. Affranchi. Oh shit. Damn, bitch. My bad. All right. Francois Belleau, for example, was listed under the names of whites in the 1803 census. And while freed blacks and mixed bloods did not show up in the census, they did appear in the notarial records. And at Point Coupee Post, the letters de liberté stated that the former slave can negotiate contract, sell, appear in justice, present documents, and do all that free and non-subject persons can do, enjoying in all things full and free will. And in 1771, Jean-Baptiste Malatri Libre bought an estate and a Nago slave from M. Oliveau. And in 1779, Jeannot Malatri Libre bought a Senegal slave. And in 1782, Jean-Baptiste Benville Malatri Libre and his wife Marie purchased 6 slaves from Ricard de Retord, an Igbo couple, and their 3 Creole children, aged 6 years, 4 years, and 18 months, and a young Igbo man, aged 23. And in 1784, Pierre Aver, a white of Canadian origin, wrote in his will that all my aforesaid goods or those which remain after my death should be put at the disposition of my neighbor named Jean-Baptiste Malatri, of whom I have proof of his freedship and sage conduct. And Aver left him his belongings, tools, and furniture as an outright legacy, and left him the use of his land and slaves and 10% of the value of their sale. In 1785, Venus Negrisi Libri bought a Mina slave, and in 1787, Henri Malatri Libri bought some land. The extent of concubinage and racial passage in Point Capi is difficult to determine with great precision, but it was undoubtedly substantial, and during the French period, emancipation of slaves was quite informal. And for example, in 1745, Vincent Laporte of Point Capi filed a statement with the Superior Council that one Marie Louise was not a slave but should enjoy complete liberty since she was the daughter of a Frenchman. And it was only as late as November 9th, 1770, that all acts relating to slaves had to be in notarial form, and thereafter a formal document, a Carta de Libertad, was issued when slaves were freed, and it was the biggest slave owners and the most prominent people who were most likely to leave traces in the documents, including in the Emancipation Papers. And it was only the rich settlers who could easily afford to emancipate their concubines, redeem their mixed blood children from slavery, and pass property on to them. And at Point Capi, a sex ratio of 1.28 among Creole slaves aged 15 through 34 between 1771 and 1794 points toward formal and informal emancipations of female Creole slaves. After 1794, the sex ratio among Creole slaves of this age groups dropped to 1.07, reflecting the substantial number of male Creole slaves who were executed or exiled following the 1795 slave conspiracy trials. Now, the high sex ratio among mature Creole slaves cannot be accounted for entirely by export of female slaves, nor by excess deaths among females. And on the contrary, the death rate among female slaves of all ages was substantially lower than among male slaves. And the sex ratio among slaves buried in the Catholic Church between 1786 and 1795 was 2.84. And though the sex ratio among all slaves found in Point Capi inventories was 1.40. The slaves executed for involvement in the 1795 slave conspiracy were not buried in the church, and there was little evidence of export of slaves from the post, especially of females. The state and sales inventory clearly reflect a strong tendency to keep slaves, especially female Creole slaves, and in the district when slaves had to be sold. And the 2,680 slaves listed in the Point Capi inventories, almost all of whom were sold either through estate and other types of plantation sales or as individuals or small groups, revealed only 13 slaves sold out of the district, and only 2 of them were women, one an African and one of an unidentified nation, and 8 of the 11 men sold out of the district were either of unidentified nations or they were foreign slaves. And the other 3, 2 of whom were sold out in 1795, were probably suspected of involvement with the slave conspiracy. A few female Creole slaves were probably exported to New Orleans, where the sex ratio favored women, and some male Creole slaves were probably purchased outside the district. But Creole slaves were, during the 18th century, managed to effectively oppose being sold out of districts where they were known and where their families lived. And the males imported into Point Capi were probably almost entirely Africans. The fact that there were 28% more adult male than adult female slaves of marriageable age among Creoles before 1795 points towards the passing of Creole slave women into the white population. Yep, I can believe that. I can believe that. Yeah, we're about to find us a good stopping point. I'm gonna read I'll get to the next page. I'll stop at the paragraph on the next page. The Spanish census are useful for determining changes in the slave and free populations over time, and the numerical distribution of slaves on estates and, at times, gross age categories by sex. But they do not distinguish between African and Creole slaves, nor are the racial categories in these censuses very useful. In order to distinguish between the local slave population and the imported slave population, and to get some indication of the extent of race mixture and racial passing, this writer has studied the slave inventory lists and emancipation documents. Now, the Pointe-Coupee documents distinguish 4 racial categories among people of African descent: Negre, Mulatto, Griff, and Quaterun. Negre meant entirely black. Mulatto meant half white and half black. Griff meant mixture of black and Indian, and Quaterun meant 3/4 white and 1/4 black. Now, the use of the term griff reflects legal concerns as well as problems of definition, and the significant number of Creole slaves, especially the first generation, had Indian mothers, and slaves who were descendants of Indians were rarely acknowledged as such in the list of slaves for a practical reason. Indian slavery was prohibited under Spanish law, and therefore slaves descended from Indian women were legally entitled to their freedom. And one could safely conclude that those slaves listed in the Pointe-Coupee inventories as griff were only a fraction of the slaves who were mixtures of blacks and Indians. By the early 1790s, griff slaves disappeared entirely from the Pointe-Coupee list, and mulatto slaves increased, and indicating a redefinition to prevent slaves descending from Indian mothers from claiming their freedom under Spanish law. Ooh, they tried to get over on them boys. Aside from legal considerations, the racial designation in the list of slaves were based partially upon physical appearance and partially upon knowledge of ancestry. And in the absence of knowledge of ancestry, much confusion could arise. For example, Dennis McCarty, a free man of color from New Orleans, who was unknown in the district, was stabbed by a mulatto slave at a party held in the Pydras slave cabins at Pointe-Coupee. And although his wound was slight, he unexpectedly died within a few days. And when he was first stabbed, he was a Negre Libre. And while being treated, he was a griff. And when he was buried, he was a mulatto. We're gonna stop there. We're going to stop there. I mean, we got about 6 pages, honestly, to finish off the chapter. We got about 6 pages to finish off the chapter, but I think we read pretty good. I think we rolled pretty well. It also has the racial designation of Creole slaves at Pointe-Coupee in the 5-year moving average. It gives you a little graph right here. It says the black is for the blacks. You have like a stripe. The stripe is for the mulattoes, and I guess you could say it's a polka dot. The polka dot at the top right here, this little bit is for the griff. Way more blacks and more mulattoes than the griff. But like they said, they was trying to skew the numbers and use different definitions so that way the griffs or the people who have Indian descent wouldn't be able to claim their freedom. So, you know, which is ain't nothing new. It's nothing new. It's nothing new. Numbers and paperwork has seemingly always been misleading, skewed, outright lied upon. But it is what it is. It is what it is. That's just how things seem to have gone. But hey, we'll keep pushing. We'll keep pushing. That was part 21. Part 21 of the Sea of Pages that is laid before us by Miss Gwendolyn Midlo Hall, Africans in Colonial Louisiana. We pushed through chapter 8, and we're almost done with chapter 8. We're on our way to chapter 9. We're on our way to chapter 9. Man, my damn neck hurts like crazy, man. I slept wrong. Ooh, we're on our way to chapter 9. And we should get to chapter 9 tomorrow night, which won't be a long session. It shouldn't be. Let me not say it won't be long. It shouldn't be. We'll try to read for the hour. But if it goes less than an hour to get to chapter 9, then so be it. That's just the way it be. That's just the way it's going to do. And we'll leave it at that. But chapter 9, like I said, it's about 6 pages. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6 pages. 6 pages till we get to chapter 9. And chapter 9 is Africanization under Spanish rule. Africanization under Spanish rule. That is chapter 9. But we are definitely on the downslope of the book. Once we get to chapter 9, that's all we got left. That's all we got left. I wonder when they're going to start talking about Opelousas. Because I had marked it down up in here. One of the slave women came from out of Opelousas. Yeah, it says breakdown of imported Creoles by place of birth. And Opelousas had one female. Bermuda, Carolina, Curacao, Dahlia, Des Isles, English, Georgia, Illinois, Jamaica, Kentucky, Martinique, New Orleans, North America, North Carolina, Opelousas, St. Dominic, St. Augustine, Virginia, Pennsylvania, and USA. These are where the slaves came from. And the most slaves came from or were imported from Carolina. Then after that, Virginia. And then you have a tie between wherever English is and Jamaica. So we'll keep pushing though. We'll keep pushing. So we worked our body, we worked our mind, and we're about to work our body one last time before the Sabbath comes in. The sun isn't down, so we still got some time, man. We still got some time to work our body. Work our body one last time, man. I get these damn love handles together. Let's push it, boy. Look at these love and try to get these love handles together. And that'll be the reading for the day. Oh man, that will be the reading for the day. So 25 things. Get your butt up. Do 25 somethings. 25.
Push-ups or something?
Yeah, 25 somethings. Watch yourself. Watch yourself. Watch yourself. I'm gonna do 25 of these and get these love handles together. So that's gonna put me at 100. So let's go. 1.
Wait, you got one
2,
on the other side? Oh,
3,
yeah, one on the other
4,
side. They got one
5.
on the other side. Keep going.
6, 7, 8,
They gonna do
9.
both arms?
Yes, sir. 25, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Oh, I gotta feel it. 21, 22, 23, 4. One more.
25.
Okay, other side. Other side.
25.
Get your butt out of the way. Sucker.
1, 2,
Hold on, count them right. 3, 4,
4,
5,
5,
6, 7,
7,
8, 9,
10,
11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. One more.
25.
There we go. Oh Lord, don't beat me up. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you, sucker? Oh Lord. Hey, we did our thing, man. We succeeded today, man. We had all we needed to succeed. We had breath to breathe, so therefore I had all I need to succeed, so therefore I did so. I succeeded in my hour read of Africans in Colonial Louisiana, which made part 21 of Miss GWENDOLYN MIDLO Hall's book. And we'll keep pushing. We're going to keep pushing one book at a time, one part at a time, one session at a time, man, until we finish the book. Here a little, there a little, till we seek and find the treasures that have been left behind for us. They hide a lot of stuff in books, so we trying to see what has been hidden. We want to expose the lies, unearth the truth. We want to explore. We want to take a look. It's in a book, The Reading Rainbow. I can't read anything. I can be. That's right, anything. I can read any book, baby. I can say what I want to say. I can
be anywhere.
That's right. We're going to take a look. It's in a book.
Reading rainbow.
That's right. We're going to read the rainbow. That's right.
I can do anything.
So, yeah, we'll keep pushing. We'll keep pushing. Ever so slowly, man. Look at that. Look at that. We read all that. We done read all that. We done read all that. Yeah, we're working our way to the end. We're working our way to the end, man. So let's keep going. Let's keep moving, man. One day at a time. Get off your butts. Do something. The objective is to be better. Better, better, better. Be better examples. Be a better example for yourself. You know, be better than you was yesterday. Try to be better. You know, try to be healthier, man. And we can do it. We can do it. Oh, yes, we can. We can do it. Oh, yes, we can. So I hope everybody has a wonderful evening, a wonderful night. The Sabbath is coming in, so get ready for the Sabbath. Happy Sabbath, y'all. For those
Tomorrow, the Wild Robot's coming out, so enjoy.
And we're going to keep pushing over here and doing our thing. So shalom, everybody, man. I'm SHILO. I'm out here, baby. SHILO out.
I should have said boo.